Since the dawn of time, innovation has been the center of society. In 1879, we invented electric light bulbs. In 1969, we took a pile of crap and turned it into a spaceship that flew to the moon. But perhaps most importantly, in 1999, the Pontiac Aztek was unveiled to the world in all of its glory. Okay, I agree, that was a bit dramatic. In fact, this car was such a bad innovation that it took a meth dealer that everyone hates to portray anyone realistically owning this car. But as time goes on, I've gained an odd sort of respect for this car, and I don't think I'm the only one that thinks so. The more I look into this car, the more I realize that this car was made fun of for the same things we applaud today. And if you give me just 7 minutes of your time, I can convince you that this car will soon be a cult classic that we'll look back fondly on. To understand what the Aztek was supposed to be, let's take a quick look at its inception. In the mid-90s, the term SUV started to become more and more popular. Other companies had found immense success with these crossovers between big minivans and sports cars, like the Toyota 4Runner, Ford Explorer, and the Jeep Cherokee. These cars had a common selling point that they could be the perfect car for hippies. I mean, they could be daily drivers and they could be taken off-road. General Motors, the parent company of Pontiac, decided that they needed to get in on this action, make a couple of bucks, go down in history, and maybe even have their car featured in perhaps the greatest show of all time. Unfortunately for them, only one of those things happened. Initially, a designer at GM, Tom Peters, wanted to create a mixture of a Camaro and a Blazer to be their SUV, and he wanted to name it the Bear Claw. My god, the name itself would have been enough for me to sell my kidney for one of these. Now, GM was going through a sort of crisis at the time. It kind of resembles puberty when you always hate your parents even though they're probably right. Well, GM hated Peters, evidently, because they immediately scrapped it and decided they'd create something else which would eventually become the Aztek. In 1999, Pontiac received the car under the GM brand because they didn't have a single SUV in their lineup. A concept car was created and revealed shortly after, and to its credit, people actually really liked it. It was praised for ultra-futuristic styling and looked to be successful in attracting the Gen X buyer demographic. And that's about where everything crashes and burns, because the next year when the production car was ready, it looked nothing like the concept. Some idiot decided they should put giant plastic trim all over the car and give it tiny 3-spoke wheels that would make the wheels on my chair look good. Actually, at the release demonstration when the cover was taken off the car, it said that there was a sudden gasp and then the crowd died of laughter. When it was officially put on production, they held another event, and this time it was even worse. I guess they were trying to appeal to their Gen X customers, I guess, because they had paid dancers mosh pit around the car in really weird outfits that not even Russell Westbrook could pull off. At the end of the presentation, and I kid you not, the head of marketing at GM literally jumped into the mosh pit and crowd surfed away. That's real baller stuff if you ask me. Now, shortly after this absolutely sick presentation, which was sure to get all the Gen X's hyped right after they did a sick skate trick or something, GM did a pretty big redesign on the Aztek. Well, in reality, no, they didn't. Remember how I said some idiot put a giant piece of plastic trim all around the car? Well, instead of taking it off after all the outcry, they literally just painted over it. That is so unbelievably lazy, I don't understand it. I've seen this redesign in person and from far it looks fine, I guess, but when you get up close, my goodness. It looks like someone plasti dipped it out of a rattle can, except it came on a brand new car that cost Walter White $24,000. The Aztek also sold really poorly to GM's surprise, somehow. They expected to sell roughly 70,000 units, which would have garnered a good profit. On the back end, they calculated that 30,000 units sold would get them to break even. In their first year, they missed both goals. In fact, they only sold 25,000 units. The Aztek was a failure clear as day, and just 4 years later in 2005, they ended production of the Shrek in car form disgrace. Nobody really heard or thought about this thing until 2008, when Breaking Bad first aired. The creator of Breaking Bad, Vince Gilligan, actually said later, the car was actually specifically chosen to portray Walt as really down bad on his luck. I couldn't imagine a sane person driving that car. As the show garnered more popularity, more and more people watched, and subconsciously the Pontiac Aztek entered viewers' brains. Well, now it's almost 20 years after the discontinuation of the Aztek, and I think I'm starting to appreciate it a little bit. Before you start begging for me to seek help, let me just explain. As with any product, featuring in a highly regarded form of media will always increase its value. For example, in 2019, a pair of new Jordan 1s were released called the Hyper Crimsons. They were decently designed shoes, but nothing out of the ordinary. They resold online for roughly the retail value of around $180. This was until October 2021, when the first trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home was released, and it featured Spidey wearing these exact pair of shoes. What happened? Well, let's just check the graphs. The value of the shoe immediately doubled and only rose as the movie came out, and then even more as the movie generated more and more hype. Well, in the same vein, I believe the Pontiac Aztek will see a similar increase in value as nostalgia for the show increases. This only becomes more apparent when we take a look at the car independently. It's almost a time capsule of the early 2000s, with weird styling that is definitely unique to that area, and features that have aged either amazingly or horribly. Funnily enough, I actually think a lot of new SUVs look kind of similar to the Aztek, but again, I may be insane for this entire video. I want to point out a few standout features that I think are really unique and definitely worth bringing back in some way. For starters, the center console is actually a removable cooler. This is to pair with the bench that appears when you open up the rear tailgate. Obviously, sitting in this tailgate bench would be uncomfortable with the sun beaming down on you, but that's exactly why the Aztek comes with a giant tent that connects to the car and essentially makes a mobile home. If you don't want that bench, fine. Instead, you can put down the rear seats and in its place install the Aztek branded air mattress that can fit 2 people comfortably as you stargaze from your Pontiac. Or whatever else you want to do, I'm not judging. I remember a viral video that was recently going around of a brand new Mercedes S-Class that dispensed windshield wiper fluid from the actual wipers. Well, the Aztek did exactly that, just 20 years ago. My point is that today, more than ever, cars require gimmicks to stand out. Technology is now widespread and Kias have the same tech that BMWs do. This is super prevalent in cars such as Tesla that offer features that nobody realistically needs, but it's a fun talking point that gets people to look at their cars. Mercedes does the same thing. The new GLE bounces up and down on command. They say it's a feature to get your $70,000 GLE out of a sand dune when you get stuck. Yeah, that looks good on a brochure, but the only thing GLE owners need to get unstuck from is the curb at a Starbucks drive-thru. So yeah, I'm not saying the Aztek is pretty, because it's not. And if you say it is, I'll never trust you to tell me how I look. But I truly believe things just didn't line up for it. It came out at a time when the economy was on a decline and many people weren't looking to spend over 20 grand on a gimmicky car, especially when it looks that bad. But if you strip away that disgusting painted trim and do a facelift, there's a very decent car under there. Even today this car works. Remember when these shoes were considered for only overweight dads who grilled and drove their convertible Corvette on the weekends? Now girls and guys wear them and it's considered stylish. Can you believe that? And if it's the price you're worried about, I got you covered too. I went on Marketplace and found 5 Azteks in the $3,000 range. So yeah, this car is ugly, underpowered, and has had a bad rap ever since it was released. But for the first time, nearly 20 years later, I'm starting to appreciate this car a little more, and I understand what it was going for. It was looking to stand out and innovate, and although it didn't sell well, I'd argue that it accomplished both of these goals and made this man a hell of a lot of money. And that's the video, guys. I hope in some way I was able to turn you and make you appreciate the Aztek just a little bit. If you guys did enjoy the video, I'd always appreciate a like and a sub as it really helps me out. And as always, have a good one, guys.